Okay, so I am Chris Kirsten from Chaffin Family Orchards, 2,000-acre farm in Northern California. The farm is 100 years old. It was originally started by UC Berkeley. They were doing trials on mission olives, and Del Chaffin was their farm manager. When the Depression hit, he had been saving all of his money in his pickup truck, and all the professors in the school wanted to get out of the program, and he bought all the land from them for pennies on the dollar. 5 generations later, still farming the same land. It's a 2,000-acre estate. We've got 300 acres of orchards. Of that, 200 acres is olives, 50 acres of citrus, 50 acres of stone fruits, and the balance is rangeland. And we produce fresh fruit 365 days a year. On the livestock side, we've got about 100 head of beef, 100 head of goats. Currently, we're at a few dozen sheep. I think we're a little over 40 right now. We used to be at 150 meat sheep, but we switched over to wool sheep. I'll talk about that a little bit more. But that's why our numbers aren't where they used to be. We do 2,000 meat birds a year, at least 500 layers year-round, and then we sell grass-fed beef, lamb, goat, chicken, eggs, and wool. These are the orchard fruits that we grow. There's 40 different sub-varieties of all those altogether. Everything from avocados to figs, persimmons, mandarins, all sorts of stuff. This is our property. So that's Table Mountain. Table Mountain's an old ancient lava flow. It ran down a riverbed. The lava ran down a riverbed. And then over eons of time, the mountains that held that constraint in of the lava flow eroded away. They call it inverse topography. So now we've got this solid block of rock that's left. And there's some really cool things about that. One thing is we have a microclimate. So the face of that mountain faces west. So every night as the sun sets, it reflects energy into the orchards. And it also absorbs some of that energy. And the energy that's absorbed trickles down into the orchards throughout the night. It's a big giant heating block. So it's also extremely mineral rich, which gives us really high brix fruits and grasses to make really mild meat and really sweet fruit. So that's looking from the mountain down at the property. I wish I had a laser pointer. Everything on the left there, that's kind of the south half of the ranch. I couldn't get it all in one shot. That's all olive orchards. And on the right, where you can see some of the orange, that's stone fruits and citrus and things over there. And then we've got rangeland that wraps all around it and some woodland as well. So this is from kind of the space view. If any of you are familiar with, who's familiar with where Oroville is? Yes! All my crew who was there last week. Oroville is about 20 minutes south of Chico, so an hour and a half north of Sacramento. So that's Lake Oroville. That's the largest earthen dam, I think, in the country for sure, maybe more than that, right there. And our farm is that little half circle over here. This is our farm. And this little guy here is our lake. You can see it's in that picture up on top of the mountain. So that's our lake there. So we actually store our own water on top of this mountain, which is solid rock that doesn't soak up any water. We store our own water up there. We've got about 2,000 acre-feet of water on average in the lake at any given time. And we grow cherries, old-fashioned. These are Blenheim heirloom apricots, old-fashioned pears. I don't even know the varietal name on these. It's like 60-year-old trees. These are our olive orchards, where our olive oil comes from. These are some olives. There's a picture that Jenny took over here. Nourish Kitchen. And the mandarins. Mandarins come on sale at Thanksgiving, so we're taking pre-orders here at the conference. We'll start shipping these all over the country. Delicious. If you've never had a mandarin, really, really good. Yeah, so what we do that's really unique is we integrate livestock into our orchards. It makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons, but very, very few people do it. Basically, you add more layers and you build symbiotic relationships, and you get more net gain for less work. Basically what we do is the sheep and the cows are our mowers. They go in and they get all that grass out of our way so we can still get people and ladders and things in there to do the work that we need to do. Chickens handle all the bugs, and they turn those into nitrogen-rich manure. And the goats handle all our invasive weeds, and they do light pruning on our olives. And in the wintertime, we'll work them out of the orchards. They'll clear fire breaks for us and restore riparian areas. So you get more crops per acre. We get better cash flow. We become one-stop shopping for customers, and we have no annual planting. It's all permaculture-based ideas. Best of all, we use about 85% less fuel than we used to. We've been doing this for 10 years, and our fuel savings is about 85% by putting the animals into the orchards. So we build fertility. Tara talked a lot about this, but we sequester huge amounts of atmospheric carbon by grazing this way. and adding the orchards another layer is additional benefit. How many of you guys in here would consider yourself full-time farmers, making at least one income from farming? Okay. And now leave your hands up if a good percentage of that is ruminants. All right, cool. Ruminants, yeah. So sheep, cows, goats. Okay, so this is the recipe. So we use these portable electric fences. You can see this guy in the back there. See that mesh netting? Okay, that's it's basically nylon that's woven with a filament that you can electrify. That keeps the predators out and it keeps the livestock in. The fences are extremely lightweight. Fence, I think, 160 feet weighs like 12 pounds. And you can move them all over the farm. They've got stakes in them. You can stake them out, put them in, and then move them all the time. So it's very flexible. It gives us a lot of control in our management style. We hook that up to a fence charger. So we use a solar panel, goes to a deep cycle marine battery, and then the charger is that piece mounted on the front there, which is, who's got that? Oh, thank you so much. Which is basically a hopped up capacitor. And then we use guardian dogs with some of the species as an additional protection from predators. Unlike what they were dealing with in Petaluma, we have a very healthy population of bear, bobcat, mountain lion, and coyote. So we're in the foothills and have actual occurrences with predators. We take almost no losses with that system. So it's a really functional, effective system. We teach a lot of classes. If anyone's really into the wine world or the grazing world, this is Kelly Mulville, who is basically the pioneer of doing the same type of agriculture, but in vineyards. Really smart guy. But this is how we put up our polynet fences. You stretch them out, and then you knock them in. When we have classes and there's 50 people there, we don't have 50 hammers, so you get Paleolithic and you get a rock. Works really well. Then we can take water with us wherever we want to go. We've got portable water troughs. And then we also have some permanent water troughs that we've put in some areas that we go to all the time. This also provides water for wildlife. And then we run the guardian dogs. And the guardian dogs, if you've never worked with a livestock guardian dog, they bond to one species. It's very little to no human training. It's just for generations, they were for like 1,000 years, they were selected to bond to an animal and protect it with their life. And so they literally give up their doghood. If you ran herding dogs with them, your guardian dog would very likely kill that herding dog. Okay, they're different animals. That's their family, and they take care of their family. You don't want them to be expendable in any way, shape, or form. They're part of our farm family at the same time. So what they do is they provide a really good threat. The fact that we're constantly moving our animals, the fact that fences are hot, and the fact that we have these very scary, vicious-looking dogs makes the fact that the predators don't create problems for us. So it works really well. We're animal welfare approved and certified predator friendly. We're going to talk more about this guy a lot, so I'm going to kind of skip over that. AWA is probably the most stringent, humane program probably in the world, I would say, for sure. Their levels of commitment are very stringent. So the cattle. We utilize the cattle in the olive orchards and the rangeland. They're too big to put in the stone fruits or citrus. I'd love to play with it at some point, but the few times they've gotten out, they love to scratch on the peach trees, and I think you'd have to move them really fast and really hard, and I'm not sure how we would figure that out. But currently, we just run them in the olive orchards and the rangeland. Now these guys are much easier keepers. You can put them on just 2 strands. So this is the same thing as that netting. It's electrified, but it's just 2 strands. And you put it for cattle, you put it at the height of their nose. And so this is the height of the nose for the moms, and this is the height of the nose for the calves that are with them. If you just have moms, you can run single strand and hold cows really effectively. So then our sheep, I'm going to try to buzz through this stuff because we're going to talk a little bit about grass-fed beef in a minute. Sheep we utilize in the stone fruit, citrus. They can also go on the rangeland, and they can also go on the olives. But sheep prefer different grasses than cattle do. They like forbs. They like things with broad leaves. They'll eat a lot of more herbaceous species that your cows will leave behind. So you're utilizing more of that pasture. You can put sheep and cows, you can run sheep right behind cows, and they'll clean up a whole bunch of stuff the cows left behind. So it makes it really cool. We used to use Cheviots, if you're familiar with breeds of sheep. That's a small-framed meat sheep. The money wasn't there because when you have a small-framed animal and some of your butchering cost is fixed, I had way too high a ratio of my butchering cost to the amount of meat that I was getting because I'm trying to run them under the canopy of an orchard. The Shetlands, a wool breed, give me a lot more sustainable income because you can pull that wool off year after year versus a terminal sale where once you harvest it, it's a one-time thing. So Eventually, I think we'll grow the Shetland herd big enough that we can do both, that we'll do meat and wool. But it just gives you an additional income stream, and it's a little bit more sustainable. So that's what we've moved to now. And the Shetlands have been easier on the orchards. This is the old Chevy herd here. They'd graze right under, see that poly net fence again? They'd graze right under the orchard trees, and they'd lamb right out there. It's just where they, it's where they lived and did their whole thing. In our climate, we don't have any shelters that we bring them into. The animals are on range their entire life, which really is the best thing for them. When you bring them into confinement is when you start having diseases and things cross between them. So they really do the best if you can keep them out as much as possible. If you're in snow country, I understand why you can't do that. And then we do, we now have 5 different colors of undyed yarn wool. So this is literally the color of the fleece. We sort each fleece by color, and then we spin them into yarn based on that color. We move everything by hand. No horses or herding dogs on the farm. The goats are my favorite. The goats are really cool. The goats are great at controlling weeds. They'll prune the olive trees. They'll cut fire breaks for us, but they have the most personality. The interesting thing, the goat farmers chuckle. The interesting thing about goats is they like to solve puzzles, and one of their favorite puzzles is how to get out of a polynet fence. So they keep you on your toes. What we've found with them is that if you move them every 48 hours, it keeps their mind active enough that they're not testing that fence as much. But that means you're moving a herd of 100 goats every 2 days. But they're really effective browsers. Browsing means eating brush. This is Himalayan blackberry. This is wild grape. This is cattail. And then we've got some different oak species here in the back. So this was just, we brought a little bit of the herd down, a small, like half the herd down, 50 head, for a farm demo thing we were having. We had a bunch of consumers come out to the farm, and they wanted to visit and see what we were doing. So it was a 2-day event. So on day 1, we put a little thing, an acre big, around an irrigation canal. And that's what it looked like on day 2. So we'll go back to that on day 1, and then on day 2. So this Himalayan blackberry is all completely gone. They started to impact the cattail. And you can't see, it's not super clear on here, but a lot of this oak is bit back. And then see these verticals here? That's the wild grape that used to be there, is no longer. So we use them in our orchards to clean up because this Himalayan blackberry is pretty invasive in our area. The seedlings come through our irrigation systems because it grows along open canals and ditches. And then these want to start choking out the trees. And that's what it'll go to. And then eventually, this one's actually wild grape. It'll take over the whole tree and it'll kill it out. It's a parasitic relationship. It'll destroy the tree and then eventually die itself. So yeah, we use the goats, also do some light pruning. You prune olives to a high canopy, so all of this stuff is a goat's favorite food, and they can only climb so high, so they clear out all that lower canopy for us. So this is where the fence line came through, and goats were on this side. Looks more like a meadow. And this is where goats were not. And you can see Himalayan blackberry. The trees here still have all their suckers on the bottom. This is old leftover star thistle, which is their favorite. If anybody knows star thistle around here, they love star thistle. It's the seed heads are like 27% protein. And then you can see how this is all even uniform, and this is kind of thatchy in here. That's Michael Pollan. He came to visit our orchards, and this is, I think, still, last time I saw him, this is still the wallpaper on his phone. So in the winter time and in the fall and the winter, we kick them up on the foothills, and this is all overgrown woodland. Hasn't been managed, really well for fire for quite some time, and so all of this was all understory ladder fuel that was eventually going to catch on fire and burn down most of our ranch. And so we got an NRCS grant to come in and start grazing this with our goats. And so we cleared out all of this understory brush. This is some poison oak, which is one of their favorites. Still hit that. But this is all cleaned out now. You still have a healthy woodland. The alternative would be come in with bulldozers and tractors and just take it all out, hand crews, chainsaws, really invasive. The goats do that, and you just keep grazing it over and over and over again. And they open that back up. And that's what browsers do in a forest. That's what goats are made for. This is riparian area, same thing. Tractors would have been the alternative here. This is day one. Throw in a bunch of goats, put some, we call these ladders. They can be just simple 2x4s, or you could have, more traditional ladder. And then day two, cleaned out. And you do that over and over again, and you'll knock this out to where it doesn't grow back anymore. These are our broilers. Broilers can be used in all of our orchards, and this is basically, these guys and the laying hens are our nitrogen program. So we don't buy any nitrogen fertilizer for the orchards. These guys do all of that for us. They go in what we call yurts. These are little movable A-frames, so this gives them some shelter to go underneath, but still allows them to free range the whole area. Put them in the orchard rows, gonna hang out with family and have a good time. Move down the orchard rows. They come out as 2-week-old chicks is when we put them on pasture. So we get them a day old in the male. They go into a brooder house for 2 weeks. You'll see the brooder house with the layers. And then they go into the yurts. They're locked in the yurts for 2 more weeks. So now they're moving twice a day in the yurts like a chicken tractor, like a Joel Salatin model. And then at 4 weeks of age, we flip open the fronts. And like you saw in the other picture, then they can free range the whole area around them. So it's kind of a chicken tractor free range hybrid model. We have nets around them, yeah. So the birds are excellent for nitrogen. I wish this picture was clearer, but all of this in the back is all dried out. This is all annuals that have done their thing. They're dead. We had one late rain after the chickens this year, and this all greened up. You can see the squares of where the houses actually were being moved, and this is all greened up, and we were able to graze sheep on that for another 2 to 3 weeks. Same shot again, same area. This is all dry out here and dead. This is all clovers and grasses that are coming up. And nothing was added to that other than one rain, which hit the whole farm evenly, and the fact that the nitrogen is there, it held on to that extra water because you had that organic matter, and it had the fertility to really let it burst. So then our laying hens, these guys are our best bug control, and like Tara said, they will absolutely rip lizards, mites, gophers, and snakes apart. And these guys really increase the Brix levels of our fruit. So when you run the chickens through, if you've had them through in the last year, you'll see the Brix, the soluble sugars levels go up on our fruit tremendously, which is really great, makes nutrient-dense food. This is our brooder house. So you've got chickens in there. They get fresh grass every day along with organic feed, fresh water. And they live in an eggmobile. This is egg 2. We have 3 of these on the farm. They roost inside at night. They've got their nest boxes in there. We come collect the eggs every day. And then this is egg 3. This is our new one. This guy is designed to go down an orchard row. So the other one, if you go back and look, kind of a Joel Salatin style, a little large to go through our orchards. And so originally we thought, oh, well, we'll just run the fences further into the orchards. And like Tara said, the chickens only go so far from home. Okay, they'd only go about 3 or 4 rows in, and then they wouldn't have any further impact. So we said we've got to get further and deeper into the orchards. And so that's when we created this guy. When we're making a move, we move them about once a week. When we're making a move, these doors go down. This is, well, it wasn't complete, but these shutter doors are here covering up the nest boxes. When we make a move, these doors go down, get to your new spot, you set up and you prop the doors back up, and you've got good ventilation for the birds. You've got doorways here to go in and out. I'll have to update with a picture of those in use. But these are chickens grazing in our orchards. These are 50-year-old Blenheim apricot trees here. Why is it bare dirt around the base of the tree? They do this every time. Open the doors, first thing they do, base of the trees, they go crazy. Scratch, 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 till about day 2 or 3. Why is there bugs around the base of the tree? What? They pupate in the soil, but from what? Why wouldn't they pupate in the soil evenly everywhere? Because it's under the trees. So the fruit that wasn't picked last year or that fell early falls on the ground, and there's larvae in there that wants to harbor over the winter, pupate in the spring, and come back and get into our trees. Chickens know this. Nobody had to teach them that. They figured that out right away. Chickens are not vegetarians. They want that bug protein. So look at, they've got all this lovely green grass to eat, and they're eating this to a desert, trying to go after those bugs, which they fertilize that. Next year the grass grows twice as tall around the base of the trees. It's really cool. Chickens and goats, you got to really watch. They can over-impact. And so chickens we move about every 7 days. I wouldn't go much longer than that, depending on your season. But I wouldn't go much longer than that. Are you ever adding anything like compost or anything? Mm-hmm. No. We're all mimicking nature as much as we can. Yeah. The olive oil, we do olive oil from our 100-year-old trees. Us and the neighbor, we have 600 acres of 100-year-old trees. That's the largest old-growth planting of olives in North America. It's all truly extra virgin, cold pressed. It's only our estate olives. This is the thing that nobody's telling you about when they're selling you olive oil, is that they mostly buy olives on the open market. You have no idea how those olives are raised. Then they press them in bottle and they put them under their own label and they go, look how delicious it is. I know this because they mostly buy those olives from us. We have surplus of olives, and every major brand in Northern California has bought olives from us at one point or another. You want to go somewhere that's had control start to finish. Then you know what you're getting, and you know, we can guarantee that they can't. So yeah, it's only our estate olives the whole way, start to finish. Sally talks about the chill test. You put olive oil in the fridge, it should solidify. We hear from a lot of people that ours doesn't. This is because missions are a low wax variety. What's solidifying in there is not the fat, it's actually wax. And I know this because the industry will sell you what's called winterized oil, and what they do is they put it in a chiller overnight, they take it out, they let all the wax settles out, and then they sell it to you. It's just wax, that's all it is. Missions have a low wax variety, and so it doesn't solidify the same way. But it's under our control the entire time. It's 100% real olive oil, and it wins awards all over the country. This is LA Extra Virgin. It's an international competition. It's the biggest competition in the world. We always take a few golds home. Last year, both of our oils took golds, which is really great. All of our fruit is farmed organically, and we use standard density trees. And I would love to talk about this at length at some point, but the industry is moving towards high density plantings, where they basically plant trees on a trellis. It's a feedlot for olives. It's more olives than the oil can support. They're all mechanized, harvested. You're losing all this cultural practice of people hand-picking the olives, and they're using tons of chemicals. Whereas before, olives were almost always intrinsically organic. There was very little things that olives needed. But now, because they're planting them at such high densities, they're using fungicides, herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizers. All of those synthetic chemicals are oil-soluble, and your finished product is an oil. So not a great, you really need to be conscious of where you're getting your oil. A lot of the really big brands that are coming out in the market that look really sexy in California and local and awesome are high-density olives. So it's killing us because they can come on the market for half the price of what we can come on because fuel is still cheap, and it's extremely mechanized, and ours is extremely labor-intensive, but you got to know what you're getting there. So a lot of people also ask about our olive oil varietals. We do a mid-season, which is a little bit spicier, and this is what the mid-season looks like. So we've got some underripe fruit, some blush fruit, and then some ripe fruit. And that gives you a nice, balanced, mild oil with a little bit of a spicy finish. And then we do our really popular late harvest oil, which is all ripe fruit, and you get those soft, round flavors all the way through. It's mild enough to make Sally's mayonnaise, so really, really nice. But we've got these on sale now at our booth, if you go check out our booth. And I can tell you more about that in a minute. This is our newest project. Who here knows what a feather down farm stay might be? We had a whole bunch of folks here in the room come stay at these new tent cabins we've built on the farm. They're 2-bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, 500 square foot, fabric sided cabins that we've put onto our farm. They're nestled into our olive orchards. And next spring will be open for consumers to come and visit us, stay on the farm, kind of like summer camp for the whole family, make memories, really get connected with your food, and have a great time. Inside, you've got this little cupboard bed. We'll see another picture of that. This is the bathroom. This is the kitchen, dining room table, wood stove, and then there's 2 bedrooms here in the back. And the really cool thing is these 3 sides, there's 3 sides here, they flip open, and so you can kind of have this hybrid porch of you're kind of in nature, but you're kind of also still in a structure in your little house tent there. That's inside the master bedroom. Then we've got this cupboard bed again. This is a bed that a kid could sleep in there. Hand grind coffee. Everything's non-electric, so it's all candle lit, oil lamps, wood stove, and that's what the tent's flipped up there. And so that's kind of where we're going next. If you're a farmer, you know how hard it is to sell tangibles, to sell actual goods to people. There are limits that they'll pay, but people still really want to be connected where their food comes from, and they're willing to pay more to make memories. And so this is the next step that we're kind of trying to make to increase that profit margin, because farming is economically challenging, regardless of what system you're in. And so we're just trying to be creative, stay on the front edge, and see where that takes us. This is our booth here if you want to go check us out, but we're also doing a Gap summer camp. So we did one this summer on a trial basis, and then we're going to go full blown with it this year. But You can send your kids and hang out on the farm, do the same thing. It's a week-long farming intensive, which all the food is GAPS friendly. So you can check out our booth and talk to us about that. Okay, so now you know who we are. Now we're going to dive into how grass-fed beef saves the world. All right, so isn't all, it's Weston Price, we all know this, but isn't all beef grass-fed? I mean, this is what we're taught. I scanned this right out of my son's children's book. Cows live in fields. They eat grass. They drink milk from their mother's udders. How often does that happen? So this is what we're told. Now, the interesting thing about beef, though, and a lot of people don't know this, is that beef is still decentralized. If you're in hog and chicken production, that animal goes from semen to cellophane, often in the same building, never having seen the light of day. But the beef industry is still different. There's still family ranches all over the country that are using a pastoral system. They've got a cow-calf operation. So they've got mother cows, they breed them, they have the calves, and then when the calves are about 6 months old, they send them off to a feedlot, which is here. But the key to this whole thing is that because all these family ranches are still running this, this is where we're going to see the change. These are the landholders, these are the stakeholders, these are the people that have the opportunity to not send their calves here and find ways to sell to the public directly or through cooperatives. So this is where all the change has the ability to happen, because the pork industry is on a 100-acre property. The whole thing happens right there. They don't have a chance to go back and put animals on the field because they're already completely centralized. Okay, so this is modern beef production. This is the feedlot. Now, I chose this picture specifically because it had some scale. I searched in Google Images for aerial feedlot, and this is the only one that I could actually get some borders. The rest were all straight down from planes, and all you saw was a checker pattern. They couldn't fit the whole feedlot in the picture. This one, at least, you could see in the background, some other things and get some scale to see how big this is. Each one of these is a feedlot pen, okay? Which looks like that from the ground. So every one of these animals was calved out by a mom on grass, raised to 6 months old, weaned, and then sent here. Okay, so this is the feed truck going down. He's dropping. He went down this side, dropped all his feed. Now he's going to turn around, do the same thing on the bunks on this side. So this guy, I like this mad cows. I'm sick and tired of being fed antibiotics, hormones, pesticide-contaminated grain, and ground up parts of our own relatives. It's the real mad cows. So this is what potentially is put into your feedlot ration. Now I'll tell you a little bit about my history. I've been farming full-time for the last 10 years, mostly on conventional cow-calf ranches. And conventional cow-calf ranches, again, are still using very grass-based mentality. But then they send their animals here. And I defended that through and through. Oh, no, the feedlot system is great. Science supports this. You guys have no idea. Consumers are dumb. They just want food to be more expensive. They don't know what they're getting after. Then I worked here for a week. Changed my whole life. I said, I didn't know it was this bad. Consumers don't have a chance. And so it changed my whole life, and I changed the way I farm. It was the same time I read Joel Salatin's You Can Farm. But this is what these guys are getting. They're getting every trash, every cheap thing that you can come up with to try to make a buck. Because it's tough. Everything about the conventional industry is about scale. And when you're on scale, quality comes last. Because you're trying to make pennies. Every little penny you can shave adds up to huge dollars at the end of the year. This is a TMR. This is a total mixed ration right here. So this is all that crap, and it's awful yellow. Why is it so yellow? It's corn, right. So in there, these guys are, it's basically, I think I got this from Will Winter, eating a heavy corn-based diet like that is like eating Krispy Kremes 3 times a day, 7 days a week, all year round. Not a real healthy diet. And the antibiotic use is huge. 70% of total U.S. antibiotic production is fed to livestock. So why are they fed corn? It's cheap. Everything in this country, our policy, I know big oil sounds so scary. Big grain is scarier, I promise you. Big grain goes through and through our American blood. It's what started this country. It's what made us great. It's where the industry is driven. It's all about the corn game, okay? And so it's cheap. We've had a overproduction policy for the last 30 years, and the government subsidizes it. So it's going to end up as livestock feed because it's a great way to value add the corn. That's all they're trying to do is value add the corn. You can sell a steak for a higher price than you can sell number 2 dent corn. But what movie is this? King Corn, yeah. And so if you live on a farm like that in Iowa and don't get snow, then that's how you have a good time skiing. Much of your food is processed like this. It's tractors moving around. It's a commodity. This very much could end up in someone's Coca-Cola or Pepsi. This is a great Michael Pollan quote. If you're standing in a field in Iowa, there's an immense amount of food being grown, none of it edible. The commodity corn, nobody can eat. It must be processed before we can eat it. It's a raw material. It's a feedstock for all these other processes. And the irony is that an Iowa farmer can no longer feed himself. Who's seen the Matrix? Okay, cool. So it'll be new for some of you. Let's hope the sound works.
Here you go, Leo.
Psst. Leo.
Who are you? And how did you know my name?
I am Morpheus, and I know a lot about you. Have you heard of the Matrix?
The Matrix?
Do you want to know what it is?
Okay.
The Matrix is all around you, Leo. It is the story we tell ourselves about where meat and animal products come from. This family farm is a fantasy. Take the blue pill and stay here in the fantasy. Take the red pill and I'll show you the truth. Welcome to the real world.
Wow! What is this horrible place?
This is a factory farm, Leo. Places like this are where most eggs, milk, and meat come from.
How did this happen?
I'll show you. In the mid-20th century, greedy agriculture corporations began modifying sustainable family farming to maximize their profits at great cost to both humans and animals. Factory farming was born. Animals are packed as closely together as possible. Most never see sunlight, touch ground, or get fresh air. Many can't even turn around. These cruel conditions cause fights and disease amongst the animals. To fix this, the corporate machine began systematic mutilations, practices such as debeaking chickens. And they started adding a constant dosage of antibiotics to their feed just to keep these poor wretches alive. This overuse of antibiotics breeds super strains of resistant disease-causing germs. Every day we get closer to an epidemic that cannot be stopped.
Ew! What's that smell?
12 million pounds of excrement. This pollutes the air and groundwater. That's why communities near factory farms often suffer from high levels of related sicknesses.
Well, it smells like shh.
And what's more, factory farming corporations have been destroying communities and mistreating their workers for decades. Since 1950, over 2 million small hog farms have disappeared. If they continue at this rate, there'll be no real independent family farms left. That is the Matrix, Leo. The lie we tell ourselves about where our food comes from. But it's not too late. There is a resistance.
Count me in!
Alright, so that's the Matrix. Okay, so I figure that we as consumers have to have good answers for our friends if we're going to eat a diet like this on things like the China study, forks over knives, why everyone's out there eating boneless, skinless chicken breast. And so let's dive into the science of ranching a little bit so that we're not ashamed of the meat that we're eating and so that we know where it comes from and why it could actually be better for the environment. So let's start here. What's worse? One cow, let's just call the paddocks equal. Let's ignore the size of the paddocks here. One cow in the same paddock for 100 days, or 100 cows in the paddock for 1 day. What's worse for the environment? One cow. Why one cow? Overgrazing. Who thinks 100 cows is worse? Alan. Go over here. Why is 100 cows worse? So there's too many animals? So I think you kind of touched on the missing factor here. It's just one day. When do they come back? The factor to overgrazing is rest. We don't know when they come back. We don't know. I didn't say it. I purposely didn't define it. So let's play out both scenarios. So the one cow goes in the paddock, and to us it just looks like grass. There's a field of grass out there. But to them, there's all these different species of grasses, and there's all these different choices. And so she goes out there and she picks her first favorite thing, the thing that tastes the sweetest, the most delicious, the most palatable, the most supple. And she goes and she munches on that grass. Okay? Then she goes to her next favorite grass, and then her next favorite grass, and then her next favorite grass. Well, what's happened in that amount of time is her first favorite grass, that species, had a chance to grow back. And she goes and she bites that one. She's broken the law of the second bite. We'll talk about what that is in a second. Okay, now the other cows. 100 cows go in there. Okay? Now you're looking around going, whoa, I got all these girls next to me and they're hungry too. I'm going to eat what's ever in front of me. I don't care if it's my favorite. I'm just going to eat. And now you build in uniformity. And now they're going to eat even. And they're going to mow even. You're going to have even impact. Now when they're done, is there anything left for them to eat? No, you're right. There's nothing left for them to eat. So if this was nature, they would move on. So if I'm the rancher and I want to mimic nature, I want to figure out how to get them to move on. Because they would leave naturally on their own. Because they've pooped, peed, and eaten everything that's there to eat. They've created disturbance. Okay, so here's what happens. Cow comes in. This is our first favorite species. Takes a bite. The plant. Now you're the plant. We're going to change roles here. You're the plant. Your solar collector is damaged. You can't get energy from the sun anymore at the same efficiency. What do? Okay, I keep hearing roots. I heard two different things. So you're going to pull energy up from your roots, because roots store sugars, like a carrot is sweet. Roots store sugars. Okay, so you're going to pull that soluble energy up, and you're going to let some of the bottom portion of your roots die off. All right? Now you're going to take that, and you're going to inverse your relationship. Sorry, wait for my lipping here. Now you have short roots, and you've got tall grass blades. This is where we break the law of the second bite. If that cow is still there, and she bites again, your reserves are missing. What do? So now you've got short bladed grass and you've got short roots. Now we've overgrazed. Before that point, it didn't matter how intensive we were, there were supplies underneath the soil. Grass is what's called a mirror species. Usually the amount of biomass above the soil is the same biomass underneath. Okay? And so now we've pulled up those reserves. Now you're short reserves. Now you've got to dig in. You've got to get your credit card, your root credit card, and you pull up a little tiny bit, and they're a struggle at that point. Now they're not going to be efficient. So what happens with the 100 cows is they go in, they bite, root sloughs up, comes up, regrowth. The cows have already moved on. They're going to wait until that root now regrows again. Now what happened to that first root that sloughed off? It's compost. It's organic matter. We're injecting organic matter into the soil. It's not just on the surface. We're pushing it into the soil. And this graze, move on, is what built the prairies of the Midwest. It's what we're raping now to grow corn and soy. It all came from wild rangeland herbivores grazing, injecting that compost into the soil, and then moving on for rest, and then coming back after regrowth. It's that cycle. Okay. What keeps cows together? Why do they want to stay together as a herd? Predators. That's right. Cows are amazing animals. I love cows the most of all the livestock because they're the most like people. We are really... Who thinks we're hunters in here? You think we're a hunter? When was the last time you chased down a rabbit and caught it in your bare mouth? We're tool makers. We're herding tool makers. Okay? We're our own little subset. Okay? And so we really like to make tools, which is why all this livestock stuff is fun and cool. And you can use all these techno-glitzy things. But we are herding animals. And so if you, let's say there's one person in a movie theater, and you walk into this movie theater as one person, how many of you sit right next to them? Be kind of weird, right? Okay. So now, I open the door, I'm shoving you in, and I say, okay, I'm locking the door behind you, and oh, by the way, there's a wild mountain lion hiding somewhere in the shadows. Do you sit next to the person now? Herding animals. It's the same. Livestock like to know, oh, well, there's somebody over there, and I'm happy they're there, but I don't want to be too close to them. When you create the threat of predation, now it's like, oh, well, we're going to be buddy-buddy and stand right next to each other. And now you graze even. Okay? That doesn't happen in set stocking. When you have barbed wire fences out there and you put 10 animals or one animal on 1 acre for 100 days, that never happens. They don't ever bunch up. And then you don't get that uniform grazing, and that's how you break the law of the second bite. This is nature's mechanism to put them together. The predators cause that pressure that pushes them back in. The cows want to push outward, the predators push inward. And when you have that in balance, you get even grazing. So we mimic that with the electric fences. That's what the polynet and the 2 strands of wire are mimicking. We're bunching them back together to get that uniformity and that even grazing. Okay, so this is how it works. It's 160 feet of fence, 14 pounds, cost $160, so it's cheaper than hard fencing. You can splice it together, get as many fences together as you want, and then you run it on these solar chargers. So it's scalable. If you have 1 acre and your 160-foot fence makes a 40-foot square, you could have 27 moves on an acre. So if you have 27 moves on an acre and you moved every day, you have 26 days of rest. If you moved once a week, you have half a year of rest before you get back to the original place. So you can play with that for your needs, for the season, for the time of year, to create the right balance that you need to get. So you don't have to have thousands of acres to make this work. You can do it on a really small micro scale, which makes it cool. All right. Now, if we're going to talk to Western Price Group, we've got to talk about fermentation. The other argument you hear from people is that cows take a tremendous amount of biomass out of the system. This is really fallible. It's not really the case. The cows eat that grass. It dumps into, where's my cool pointer? It dumps into their rumen here, and the rumen is a giant fermentation tank. It's like your crock of sauerkraut on your counter. And so what it really does well is it grows bacteria. And so as the grass is fermenting in here, cows can't digest the grass any better than we do. Cellulose is really hard, fibrous, but the bacteria can. And so the bacteria grows in there, and it multiplies, and it breaks down the cellulose. And then, when that grass is ready to pass through the rest of the stomachs, the bacteria goes with it. So what the cow really grew was bacteria. That's where a huge percentage of the nutrition comes from, is that bacteria that it grew to break down the grass. And so most of the grass that came out of the field passes back out her backside, now probiotic rich, enhancing the soil. Okay, so now we're adding microbes back to the soil. So you're really creating a positive. Very little of her meat and skeletal structure came from that grass alone. Most of it came from being enriched by bacteria.
Did you know our grasslands are turning to...
We're going to try to pull that down because the neighbors said they can hear us.
Did you know our grasslands are turning to desert? These grasslands that are so important for life. They hold soil in place, store water, store carbon, and feed billions of life forms. 1/3 of the Earth's land surface faces the threat of desertification. Imagine the impact of losing our grasslands on civilization, on the Earth. What if I told you that we had the power to change it? But to change it, we must understand it. Imagine a world of large herds of caribou, buffalo, and other grass-eating species migrating over the lands with their predators. The soils, plants, and animals developed together and lived in balance. Large herds grazed, defecated, stomped, and salivated on the land, which built soil and deepened plant roots. Over time, however, these wild herds have almost entirely disappeared and have been replaced with a low number of sedentary livestock. This disrupted the balance of birth, growth, death, and decay. Grasslands depend on biological decay to survive. And without it, desertification persists. Desertification has long been blamed on overgrazing, too many cattle, sheep, and goats. Although not backed by science, this belief led to human policies and technologies to control desertification, such as removing animals and rejuvenating grasses with fire, further contributing to the problem. While fire does offer short-term benefits by removing dead material to allow new green flush, it also destroys soil cover and puts carbon into the air, causing long-term damage. Destocking animals allows the land to rest, but over-rest inhibits biological decay and can lead to fires. The process must be biologically active. Grass needs animals to thrive. Recently, we discovered that the problem can be reversed with the very thing on which it has been blamed, herds of livestock. a new form of management that mimics the natural behavior of wild herds and restores the balance that once was. This can be done through holistic planned grazing. With a holistic approach, the natural cycle can take place. The grasslands can be healed. People can thrive, and the earth can be restored. Plants, animals, and soils developed together. Only when our approach to livestock management mimics nature will our grasslands begin to thrive. Under the research and direction of Alan Savory of the Savory Institute, this methodology to reverse desertification has been proven successful in parts of Africa, Australia, North America, and South America. Be a part of this change.
Who knows who Alan Savory is? Nice! That's awesome. Okay, great. So the thing I love about Alan's work, how many years has he been doing this, Andrea? Where'd you go? 40. Okay. So Alan's been working on this for 40 years. Andrea tonight is going to give our keynote. She's one of Alan Savory's managers, so I'm super stoked. I'm all geeked out. We hung out all last night. It's the thing about Alan's research that's so incredible is not only does it take into account the ecological side, but it talks about the social and the economic side as well. Because if all three legs of those stools, the stool doesn't come together, then it doesn't work. And last night we joked, we added another leg, we made a table, nutrition. Okay, so you got to have the socio, you got to have the economic, you've got to have the environment, and you've got to have the nutrition. Okay, put a photo there. All right. Who knows who Dan Daggett is? Yeah, Dan Daggett's really cool. Yeah, a little less known. Wrote this great book called Beyond the Rangeland Conflict. That was his first book. Before that, he was really hardcore environmentalist, fighting ranchers. And they started this little group called, originally they called themselves 6-6. There was 6 ranchers and 6 environmentalists. They would get together and they would hash out their issues. What they realized right away is about 80% of what they talked about they agreed on. The ranchers were just as passionate about the environment as the environmentalists were. Then the environmentalists said, well, wait a minute. We're not doing anything on the land. We don't have any stake in this. We're just trying to protect it from afar. These guys are out there doing it every day. And they eventually grew their group to be huge. It was part of creating the California Rangeland Coalition, which is all sorts of agencies working together to protect open space and rangeland. And they called their group at that point Boots and Birkenstocks. So the two groups getting together. So this is actually an advertisement for conventional cattlemen that Dan has done. But listen to the message and see if it gels with us and what we're talking about today too.
I Am Angus is brought to you by the Identity Profile for Angus, helping Angus producers everywhere to accelerate genetic progress and reduce risk in genetic investment.
It's almost considered a...
Can you hear that in the back?
I Am Angus is brought to you by the Identity Profile for Angus, helping Angus producers everywhere to accelerate genetic progress and reduce risk in genetic investment.
It's almost considered a conventional wisdom that all environmental problems are caused by humans. And ideally, if you reduce the impacts of humans to zero, like in a wilderness, then everyth's natural and you really don't have any environmental problems. They're all solved. But what we find, I mean, there's an example after example where it doesn't work out that way. But when I talk about what I do, I bring cows on the land or use grazing animals in order to restore health to the land. They say, why do you bother doing that? Why don't you just leave it alone? You just take the cows off and it'll come back healthy. Well, we've got places that have had cattle removed for as long as 65 years is one place that I watch. And it's almost as bare as a tabletop there. How it happens, we go and we watch these places as this happens to them, and what we see happening in many spots The grasses produce leaves, blades of grass, whenever they grow. And if nothing is there to graze them off, they stand there, especially out here in the desert where you don't get snow or anything to fall on them and break them off and bend them off or blow them off, and nothing steps on them. They stand there and they shade that part of the grass plant that's alive. And as they shade it, it becomes less functional. And it becomes less functional, it becomes less healthy, produces fewer blades of grass, and eventually, if that happens long enough to that plant, it will eventually die. And because things like wind and even raindrops have a tendency to pound the soil and compact it into a crust, it's very difficult for seeds of grasses, which evolved with grazers, to plant themselves. If they don't have animals coming through and scuffing and kicking and trampling, they don't get planted. So what you end up with is a slow process of desertification, to where the land will end up, and in cases we've seen it, become completely bare from being protected. Just to demonstrate how you can use animals to get native plants to grow, is generally we go out and we spread seed, native plant seed usually, because that's what folks are interested in. And then we generally spread some sort of forage, hay, because there's nothing to attract grazers there if there's nothing on the ground. And some of the places we're talking about are so bare that even the soil is made up of crushed rock particles that have been sterilized by various chemical processes, i.e. mine tailings. So we put down the hay, then we bring on the animals, they eat the hay, they defecate, they urinate, they stomp around, they grind in some of the hay, they grind in the seeds. It's just like you do in a garden. They plant the seeds and tamp them in. And then we take the cows off and wait until we get some moisture of some sort to come. Sooner or later, even out here in the desert, it rains, and it'll absolutely blow you away what happens when the rains finally come. Prejudice that grazing animals, cattle and sheep, are bad for the land, as far as I know, goes all the way back to the founder of the Sierra Club, John Muir. He tried to get grazing animals removed from the Sierras because he wanted to protect, and therefore he wanted to enhance, he wanted to make sure that they would always be there, the beautiful meadows of wildflowers that he considered to be being destroyed by grazing animals. It's really interesting. There's an author, a woman named Mary Austin, that when Muir was writing about how they would have to remove grazing animals from the Sierra in order to protect the meadows, she was writing at the same time that the meadows are there and the meadows are blooming because of the sheep, not in spite of them. But we listen to John Muir instead of Mary Austin. If we don't make the environmentalists as accountable as we make the producers, things are just going to keep getting worse. When one side is given a free pass and the other side is assumed to do almost everything wrong, you're not getting a complete picture. You're getting a distorted picture, and you're going to manage yourself into problems, serious problems. The future of ranching is in realizing all of the different products, all of the different results, all of the different benefits it can produce. And I think that realization has to happen on both sides of the fence. It has to happen for the environmental groups, but it also has to happen to the ranchers. Well, the next step for me is to keep learning, keep working, keep coming up with ways to tell this story that help to get it across. I mean, it's one of the things. I love to take a walk in the desert and try to think of a new way to make a point. I love the land, and I love learning what it has to teach me. And I like where it takes me. It takes me into beautiful places like this. It can't get much better than that. This is my university. This is where I do all my learning.
So Dan's doing some pretty neat work. Most of, you saw some pieces of that, most of what he's doing is restorative grazing on mine tailings. And they're just taking the most denuded, most sterilized rock subsoil base and getting grass to grow back there. They're literally building topsoil out of nothing with just manure and a poop and stomp method. He asked if that makes the meat pretty toxic. That is a concern. And Dan is not in a meat program. I don't know if he's just using cow-calf, but he's mostly focused on the restorative part. So, yeah. So how do we graze in nature's image? We want to control overgrazing by controlling time, and that's rest. We want to reduce the number of herds, not herd sizes. We want to get that big pen with all the polka dots in it. We want to change animal numbers when conditions change. Recovery is more important than utilization. We want to plan for diversity of management tools and monitor ecosystem changes. Lassiter Philosophy of Cattle Raising. This book goes back to 1920s. It was written by Tom Lassiter. His family never really moved away from selecting for grass-based genetics. But if you are into raising livestock, I would read this book. It's the best genetic blueprint I've ever seen on how to crank up your genetics to match your environment, your management styles, and your end goals as quickly as possible. It's all about how to save the best of this generation to propagate into your herd into the future. It's a really great book. It's like 100 pages, really easy read, but a great little manual. This is Alan Savory, who wrote Holistic Management, New Framework for Decision Making. Everybody sees this as kind of the grazing Bible. It's really a management decision-making type of book. It's not so much the grazing Bible, but it is the guy who created the entire model that we're all mimicking, including Joel Salatin. Just a quickie by Alan Savory. This was his. Was this for his TED Talk? Oh, what we talked? Yeah.
Hello, I'm Alan Savory, a Zimbabwean, and I represent two organizations, an International Savory Institute in New Mexico and the Africa Center for Holistic Management in Zimbabwe. What is the biggest threat to humanity that we've ever faced? Frankly, it is climate change, which most people think is almost entirely due to fossil fuels. But in reality, you'll find that it's due to massive environmental malfunctioning. The world's vast grasslands and savannas turning to deserts, billions of acres being burnt, the agricultural destructions of soils with the vast release of carbons that entails, and fossil fuels. And of the two, I believe agriculture is the greatest contributor. Desertification or land degradation has destroyed many civilizations, and now it's threatening us globally. Now, years ago, working on this problem in Africa, we came up with a way to solve these problems. It was profoundly simple, took the longest possible time to find, many trials and errors, dead ends, but eventually, by persevering, we found a way to begin solving these problems. We are actually reversing desertification back to thriving grasslands, savannas, and we're doing this with the most vilified thing after fossil fuels in the world, cattle. The project we're running in Africa, reversing desertification, where we haven't known water in 100 years in the dry season. We have open water, fish, water lilies, geese, elephants and other game drinking at it. We have no fear of droughts or floods on that land because the water is so readily absorbed into the land and remains there. It is not an exaggeration to say that we are truly showing a way to begin addressing the most pressing issue that has ever faced humanity. And we want to get this message out to the world as fast as we can. So exciting is this because it doesn't cost money, makes money, doesn't disrupt people, is in line with the culture and livelihoods of pastoralists and agro-pastoralists, that people have got very excited about it. Pastoralists are saying it's the first thing that's offered them hope in their lives, of saving their cultures. Throughout history, anything that is a paradigm-shattering idea and conflicts with beliefs of authorities is fiercely resisted, and that has happened to us. Millions and millions of dollars are being spent annually to try to reverse desertification with no hope of success, and we are clearly demonstrating that it can be done with no cost and while increasing income and wealth and prosperity for all these people. How do we get this over to the world and to the world consciousness rapidly? What we want to do is to invite key influential people to visit Dibangambi Ranch, close to the Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe, on September the 10th and 11th of this year. To come and stand in recovering desert, see it for themselves, speak to pastoralists and help us spread the word. It just has to be seen to be believed, but it is true and you will see it. We are reversing desertification for the first time in history. We're enlisting your help because we've got to change the future.
So how many of you knew that eating the way that we eat as Western pricers, you're saving the planet? Right? Yeah. It's not something to be ashamed of. I actually think this is the biggest and most pressing issue of humanity. It's bigger than climate change. It's bigger than big oil. It's bigger than all of it. It deals with everything at once. It deals with hunger. It deals with environment. It deals with social issues. It deals with economic issues. And this is the guy that's preaching it, so it's pretty exciting. I think I'm going to zoom through these pretty fast. I think most of us here know these. Grass-fed beef is much higher in omega-3s than your feedlot beef. Omega-3s are known for reducing risk of cancer, obesity, diabetes. They're better in the good fats. So feedlot beef is 20-to-1 ratio, 20-to-1 omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. Grass-fed beef is 3-to-1. Yeah, the red number's bad. The coronary artery disease, hypertension, arthritis, cancer, other inflammatory and autoimmune disorders could all be corrected with omega-3s. This is what happens to omega-3s in the feedlot. This is a great study that was done. So at 0 days, you've got a nice 3% of your fat. Down at 180 days, which is the average time in a feedlot, you're at 0. This is what happens to vitamin E. Now, so grain-fed beef, very low in vitamin E. Grass-fed beef, very high. Why would grain-fed beef have a plus extra E? Anybody know what that is? Plus extra E? They feed vitamin E in the feedlot at the very end prior to harvest, because when the meat in the store has an antioxidant in with it, it doesn't oxidize as much in the package, so you don't get that graying brownness that consumers don't know what to do with. And so when you're selling a fresh beef product and it gets gray and yucky, they throw it away. They feed vitamin E in the feedlot to stop that. Grass-fed beef gets it naturally. But yeah, they feed them all sorts of vitamin E supplement. This is synthetic E. Oh, absolutely, yeah. So this is beta-carotene. It's the same thing, and the numbers just crash the further they go on grain. The O157H thing. So everybody's heard about E. coli in beef. If we asked you guys 30 years ago who had heard of E. coli in beef, nobody knew what it was. O157H7 is it's a feedlot disease. When the cow in that big fermentation tank, think back to that crock of sauerkraut on your counter. When you pour corn in there and you ferment corn, what do you get? You get whiskey, right? You get a very acidic environment. We have an acidic stomach. And so over time in this feedlot, of generations and generations and millions upon millions, tens of millions of animals, E. coli mutated to be able to tolerate a high acid environment. So now before, where the cow had a very basic stomach, or a neutral stomach, now the parasites in there now get through us, because it's acidic. They've learned to thrive in an acidic environment. They come to us, they get to our stomach, they see all this hydrochloric acid, and they're like, oh, we've seen this before, we'll just pass right through. And that's when they start getting after us. And that's why now we have a problem. Before, E. coli O157H7 never existed, and it was created through feedlot mutations that happened over time, just naturally. This is total coliform count, which if you guys are into dairy or anything else, it's a little more confusing. There are lots of coliforms out there. O157H7 is the nasty one that makes you sick. Most of our, all your bacterial-rich things would have coliforms in them. Okay, you're not waving to me. There's a question in the back. And then how does it taste? This is the big one. Grass-fed beef, I compare it a lot to wine. The wine industry, they were great about embracing diversity. None of our other commodity crops have figured out how to do that as we move into this new era of selling direct to consumers and celebrating different flavors and different varieties. But beef is a lot like wine, and different regions are going to grow different flavors. Management style is going to play into that. A breed of the animal is going to play into that. California, we grow really great grass-fed beef. We grow some of the best grass in the world for 6 weeks of the year. So our season is short, but if you can finish animals in that window, you can really inject them full of marbling. I'll explain that a little bit. An animal grows its skeletal structure first, its muscling second, and its fat last. So you want to get it to a full mature size and then offer it all the feed it can handle to inject that marbling and a nice fat cap over the top of its body. Okay? And that fat cap is really important. We take our beef and we have it butchered. We have to use a USDA butcher, but we've got a guy that started his operation, I think, in the 40s. He has a USDA inspector. Once you have one, you can't really lose one. If you go to a standard USDA inspector, they want 50,000 pounds of uniform beef before they'll even talk to you, a semi-load, truckload of beef. Okay? You go to my little butcher and he goes, don't give me more than 10 a day. Okay? He can only handle 10 heads. So he's a little small artisanal butcher that just happens to be grandfathered in with this USDA inspector. So all of our beef goes there, and then it's all dry aged. Do you guys know what dry aging is? You let the entire carcass sit and it hangs. You let the water evaporate, and the enzymes in the beef break it down. It's charcuterie. It's like a fermented meat product. And you get this wonderfully rich, nutty, soft flavor in the beef, really mild and delicious. So between those two things on our farm, harvesting only after that 6-week window of that intense graft growth, and then dry aging the beef, you get this really mild, palatable product that we're shooting for. And so that's what we're going for. I've had beef that has a little bit more grassy flavor, and I like that. I don't mind it. But we're trying to reach out to the masses, and the masses are used to really mild, really easy to eat, tender meat. And so that's what we're shooting for, and in California, we're really good at doing that. There's some good cookbooks on how to prepare grass-fed meats to their fullest. We've got one of the authors here in the room. There's Stanley Fishman in the back. This is his first book. And then his second one, Tender Grass-Fed Barbecue. He actually mentions us in this one for our olive oil for making some of the marinades. What's that?
Best olive oil in the world.
Thank you, Stanley. He says it's the best olive oil in the world. And then to end, I want to just play this one last little short clip, and then we can open it to questions.
Born with the rising of the moon, the pulling of the tides, the ancient seeds are growing.
What I was going to talk about was biologically correct agriculture.
It's about deeper values which connect the way we farm the soil to our health and the health of the planet.
Every culture that collapses because they kill their topsoil. And it's all down in the Gulf of Mexico.
Collapse of soil as the basic resource has led to decline of societies for the last 12,000 years.
The planet will last long enough. That's not a problem.
Nature can correct herself. But a lot of times it's going to take years.
People just don't understand.
We live in the most ecologically illiterate civilization that has ever existed.
What have we handed our children? How much of a miserable failure of a society have we been?
We went to this tremendous cheap food policy.
Now, there we are out there on that pendulum looking back down at the middle and saying, uh-oh.
That's the consequences of what we did to get cheap food.
When a culture worships at the altar of fatter, bigger, faster, cheaper,
it's not really providing nutrition to us.
That food system mantra will express itself in the population.
It's providing an illusion of nutrition.
We got a hell of a piece of work on our hands here. And as far as I'm concerned, we haven't got a minute to lose. We've got to get going.
The real issue is to get the consumers educated.
What people don't realize is that you vote with your fork.
If we get angry and we say, I don't want that, I do want that, it shifts.
Now, how quick can we turn around our practices and preserve the soil and the soil biota that we have left so we have a sustainable system for the long term.
Is the planet a community or a commodity? What's that story?
We need big agriculture and small agriculture, and we've got to work out how we sustain civilizations. If we don't, the future is grim indeed.
And no one's fool enough to touch the dark sea.
So that's you guys. That's the Cavalry. Okay, so thank you. So if you have questions, I'm happy to take them. Just come up to the mic here so they get on the recording. And just have to honor Aaron here. Aaron Lusich made that film. There's a much longer, millions of hours one day maybe coming. We don't know. But it's a fantastic film. Go to wearewhateat.org. Wearewhateat.org. It's fantastic. Don't miss it. Watch the 15-minute short. It's a longer version of that. It's really good. Yes?
I just had a question about the dry aging. What temperature and how long do you do it for?
What temperature and how long? So we go a minimum of 21 days. Like to get to 28 days if I've got the fat cover, but I guarantee consumers 21 days. Temperature runs about 32, 33 degrees.
Yeah. Do you happen to know anything about how it went in September? The 20 influential people that went to the Victoria's Falls
Andrea,
there?
how did the 100 people in September at Zimbabwe go? Great. Okay. Sure. Cool.
Did we get any influence into the industry and the governments that regulate this?
Yeah. Are you going to talk about that at all tonight in your keynote? The 100 people thing? No. Okay. All right.
That actually ties into what I was going to say. My sister's actually in Zimbabwe right now, just visiting friends, and I was wondering if you can go and visit the Savory Institute, or can, how could I tell her to get there? Okay.
Hi, I have about 1 million questions, but I'm going to start with one, which is that we've been trying to do a much smaller scale on our land and build up, and we got a couple of dairy cows, and they calved, and we thought, oh, great, we're going to put them in the orchard. And the first thing the calves did was for about a day they ate grass, and then they started eating the trees.
Right.
Why?
What kind of orchards?
They were chestnuts.
Okay. How high's your canopy?
It starts about here.
Yeah,
but I mean, they would actually. I mean, we gave them salt, but they would actually rip the bark off the trees. They girdle a couple of trees.
Cows will eat about 80% grass. Mm-hmm. I'm getting double picked up here. 80% grass and 20% browse. Okay. Goats will do the opposite. Goats will eat 80% browse and 20% grass. So they still want those woodies. That's where all those minerals are. That's why goat is really nutrient dense. There's tons of minerals in it because they eat all that browse. Well, the cattle recognize they need that as well. And so you're going to have a challenge. I hope you have established trees. Maybe you don't mind having the canopy up a little higher, let them prune it themselves, or you can prune it away from them.
Well, it was the girthing. I mean, they were actually eating the bark and girthing them if we didn't move them fast enough.
Olive trees are tough enough to support that, but then the next step would be, yes, to move them more often. Mm-hmm. And now you play with that labor equation. Is there margin there to move them as much as you need? And give them minerals.
Give minerals. Yeah, we did give them minerals, but that didn't seem they liked those trees.
Right.
Yeah, I have two questions. The first one, I was wondering some of the criticism of grass-based, or just of cattle, is the amount of methane that they produce in terms of climate change.
Right.
And Alan Savory was talking about the reduction in CO2 with grass-based farming, so I was just wondering if you knew anything about, like, if that was actually a significant thing to be worrying about, the CO2 from
cattle. So methane has a lot to do with the fermentation that happens in the rumen, and so when they're on grass, drastically less methane is produced. Mm-hmm. You got any addition to that?
Feedlot.
Right.
Is what you're talking about.
Right. So it doesn't happen in the same numbers. I don't have good research on that because it's hard to do. How do you chase a rangeland cow around and measure the methane in their farm? It's tougher to do. So.
The other one was I lived in Mexico for a year, and there isn't really a food consumer movement there, partly because there's not a middle class, but I was wondering, it didn't seem like, I was just wondering how well this system works for like populations that are much more dense, because it seemed like the farming in Mexico, I was just wondering in terms of like how much food you can get out of an acre in grass-based farming.
So you get more, and Andrew's going to talk about that some tonight, but typically when moving to a grazing system like this, you get 100 to 300% more production out of the land. Okay, so I'm not going to go too far in what she's talking about tonight, but there's absolutely more production that can be had there. And that's why I specifically brought up that scalability, the fact that you could do this on small acreages. Maybe you don't do it with cattle, maybe you do it with another ruminant like goats or sheep, something that's smaller, maybe more suited for a backyard type setting, but it can absolutely be done on smaller pieces. You just make the cells smaller and move them more often.
Is that like compared to grain-based farming? Because like where they're not growing cattle in Mexico, they're growing corn.
It's compared to set stock grazing. It's way more productive than corn.
Oh, okay.
Corn is really good. It's your most productive monoculture. Okay, but as soon as you start adding other layers of diversity, you could farm 2 layers of diversity really poorly and way outsurpass the production of corn. It's when you're only going to grow one thing that corn does that really well, and that's hard to beat. But when you've got layers and you've got things that are integrating together, it's really easy to surpass corn's production.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And on the methane one, I'll go back to that. The other part of that is kind of intrinsically we know that it's not as big of a problem because the amount of herd animals that used to be on this planet was much higher, and it's only recently that we're seeing issues. Okay, so these huge wild herds on native prairie, there was much more numbers than what we currently have on the planet. Yeah, absolutely.
And making corn breaks down a lot of carbon.
A huge amount. Grain farming is extremely intensive and puts a lot of carbon up in the air. Yeah, Steve, what's up?
Yeah, I wanted to suggest to people in reference to Dan Daggett, I listened to him speak about 10 years ago with a mixed group of environmentalists and ranchers, and I'll bet he still speaks, so if any of you have these issues and you're in ranching area, he'd be an excellent person to ask to come and speak to your groups.
Yeah, he does still speak. I think he's about $5,000. He lives down in San Luis Obispo. And he's on the road a lot.
Yeah, so. His price has gone up.
Yeah,
but he's very, very good as a speaker, and
really
he knows how to talk to
ranchers to see the light. Yeah.
Hi, I was just wondering, what kind of goats do you have?
So I didn't talk much about genetics, but all of our animals are mixed breed, and then we use purebred males to breed them. And so some of the breeds going into our goats was we started with some Kiko with like 1/8 mancha in them, a little extra dairy, a little extra bag, but they're really good browsers, and then we bred boars onto them over and over and over again.
You bred what?
Boar goats, Spanish meat goats.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
I have another goat question, which is, so you had said that you didn't use shelter for your animals, and I'm wondering if that's also true for your goats.
It is.
And I'm also, okay, wow, that's great. And I'm also wondering if you, I noticed they do such a great job clearing, but then I find I have to go back in with a machete or something to like get that out of there, or
to get all the
thickets,
thick stuff.
Yeah.
What we find is just over time they'll just keep overgrazing that back, and you can go in and speed that process up, but that'll eventually break down and decay. It just depends on what your timetable is and how quickly you want it cleaned up. And in reference to your shelter question, we don't have built structure, but we're running them in woodlands and orchards, which would be a very native shelter setting. And so we do offer them protection. It's just natural protection.
Okay, great, thanks.
This is a question about the prairie and the prairie soils. Yesterday, one of the speakers in the farm track, the seed guy, mentioned there are books out, one of them called 1491 and another 1493. And, of course, America was discovered in 1492. So the implication, or that this is kind of what I got, was that these huge herds of buffalo came after the Europeans came and they destroyed the European or the Indian farming or something, and it was actually what do you call it, a pathological condition. I had never
the
heard.
book's on my list. I haven't read it.
Does it make sense to you that
it makes sense to me that roaming herds of herbivores were out there doing their thing, and the Indians were working in concert with them, managing that herd, and then we screwed that up.
But would the buffaloes then ever have gotten to be too big, or
no? Because predation would have controlled that. That's where that yin and yang come to play. So if your population of food gets too big, your population of predators explodes. And then they start eating more because conditions are easier for them. So they have more young survive, they eat more food, and then the balance goes back down. And then some of those predators die off as they start running out of food, and the equation always balances out. It's always in flux, but it's always close to balance.
Well, see, and that's how I think of it too, that you wouldn't have, the bison wouldn't be destroying these wonderful prairies and the grasses.
Absolutely, we're not. They're enhancing it. The prairies and grasses are there because of the bison. And the bison are there doing the right thing because of the predators.
Okay, so I got to read the books and get a little better.
We both will. We'll read it.
Huh? What?
We both have to read it.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll be quick. Do you guys have a program or relationship with other ranchers in California, Northern California?
We do. We do formally. We do informally. My farming partner started our local Weston Price chapter. She's now got 700 members in the last 3 years. A lot of ranchers are coming to those now. They want to do things the Weston Price way. They want to understand this. And so, yeah, we're plugging a lot of people in. We have a lot of guest speakers come in, both for farmers and consumers.
On your property there?
Not on our property, but,
okay.
But yeah, kind of through our organization.
Just through that?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I go to your website or something?
You'll get some of that for sure, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you really want to go to Holistic Management. You want to read the green book that I had there. Google Alan Savory.
Okay.
Those are the people. Holistic Management Institute and Savory Institute are the two that are really putting out good information on that.
Somebody drop. Okay, good enough.